evening, everyone. We are making history right now. When I say we, I mean the collective humanity. Artemis 2 is nearing its completion around the moon. We're going to pull that up here in just a second because, wow, I think they've just gone further. This was maybe an hour ago, a couple hours. I don't know if I know track of time, but they've surpassed the distance of Apollo 13. And I think we even lost communication with them there for a little bit. And that was when they were going around the moon. And they're just on the other side now, from what I understand. Pretty incredible. That must be a frozen image there. I was wondering if he was going to move, but I don't think so. So, tonight, I'm glad you're here. We're going to keep an eye on this, Kevin. Feel free to pull it back up in case anything cool comes across their screen.
Will do.
If you guys were here on Thursday, we had the opportunity to pick the brain of Dr. Peter McCullough, and it was 2 hours that just blew my mind. My wife was like, you were speechless there for a few of his statements, and what was I to say? I mean, I could have been doing, whoa, no, you're kidding me, like over and over and over again for 2 hours. But a lot of that, I just, you don't have words. And it sort of reminded me of the joke where a conspiracy theorist goes to heaven and he's talking with God there, and he says, God, who was it that killed JFK? I just, I've been wondering my whole life, and I just want to know. And God said, well, it was Lee Harvey Oswald. He acted alone, shooting from the book tower. Oh, man, said the conspiracy theorist. I didn't realize how high this went. Okay. All right.
That went over my head.
Went over Kevin's head. Basically, if you're a conspiracy theorist, everything's a conspiracy. God himself couldn't change the answer to that. But what was unique about Dr. McCullough's experience is I witnessed that also independent of his experience. Obviously, he experienced it 1,000 times fold, but even in my little community, what I knew to be truth, how I knew the system was acting, how pharmacies were acting, none of that was real. And so, there's been a huge breakdown in trust, really, with regard to patients and the healthcare system at large. Some estimates, actually, there's been some surveys on this. So to put this in perspective, before the pandemic, approximately 75% of Americans had trust in the healthcare system, which I thought was pretty high, but pre-pandemic, those were definitely different times. So 75% of Americans trusted the United States healthcare system. To date, that number has dropped to 40%.
Dog.
Right.
That's a collapse.
That's a near about collapse, which is interesting because of all of the conspiracy stuff we hear about NASA and the moon landing. According to those surveys, 9 out of 10 people believe that the moon landing happened the way that it was said to have happened. And 7 out of 10 people have a favorable view of NASA. Not everybody agrees that, we should be going to the moon right now, or maybe they disagree on objectives with regard to NASA. But overall, there's a favorable view of NASA, almost double that of the United States healthcare system, which is a little surprising, I think, given all of the stuff we see on social media and whatnot. What is interesting, though, is that we're talking about systems here. 85% of people still trust their own doctor. And so that's sort of what I want to get into tonight, sort of when relationships and systems collide, what is the consequence of that? I want to get back to NASA. NASA has spent decades building trust, and they do so intentionally, but there's almost an unspoken element to it as well. For example, they perform missions that cost, millions and millions of dollars. So in order to get any type of budget from the government and from our tax dollars, they have to promote themselves, right? So we know what missions that they're planning on. We know what the purpose of their mission is. They explain the risk and the benefits and all these things, right? When there's a failure of a certain mission, everybody knows about it, right? They make movies about it, and we learn sort of what goes on behind the scenes, whether it's true to life or not. Obviously, everything is, dramatized for effect, but we understand that there's processes, and in most cases, the astronauts, if not every case, are shown to be heroes in the circumstance, right? Not saying they're not. That's just the atmosphere that NASA curates. And so we know when things go wrong. We know when things go right. There's almost total transparency there. So when people ask, why don't people trust medicine? Why don't people trust the healthcare system? Maybe instead we should be asking, what is the system that we have created where people either trust or don't trust us? If you have your theory, please put it in the comments. I would love to go back and read it when we're done here. There is an article I want to bring your attention to. This was published in the Journal of Pain, actually last year, so it's relatively up to date. It's entitled Persistent Pain, Long-Term Opioids, and Restoring Trust in the Patient-Clinician Relationship. This was written by lead author Dr. Paula Lozano. And she makes a few points in here, specifically as it relates to the relationship between a pain physician and a pain patient. She says, despite robust evidence of the harms of opioids, clinicians and patients who are charged with reducing opioid analgesic dosages face challenges. So, I've pointed this out before. I'm going to point it out again. I'm going to start this paper off with a critique. Overall, the paper is fantastic, by the way. So if you had a hand in creating this paper, well done. And if I might say, overdue. That being said, a small critique that I have right out of the gate, if I were a pain patient reading this, again, I'm looking at this as I'm understanding now that the priority of the pain management community, meaning the providers, the physicians, and the mid-levels, and everyone in between, if the primary mission is to reduce opioids, okay? And if I were a patient understanding that, I would immediately be put on guard. So one of the things I talk to my patients about right out of the gate is, hey, look, we pretty much have two goals here, two broad goals. Number one, we're going to control your pain so that you can move around, have a good function, and a good quality of life. Okay, pretty straightforward. Reduce your pain. And then number two, and by the way, number two only comes if number one is accomplished. Number two is reduce your dependence on oral analgesics, of course, including things like opioids. And I don't think that should be controversial, right? Because okay, let's say you have high blood pressure or diabetes. Wouldn't you want your doctor to first manage your blood pressure or your diabetes, keep you alive and upright and functioning, and then institute measures, let's say in the long run, that can help reduce your dependence on blood pressure medicines or insulin or things of that nature? I mean, God forbid something bad were to happen and you couldn't get access to these life-saving medications, right? You're really not free of the system when you're living on medications every day to keep your numbers within range. And, so I think the same is true for chronic pain. But so often, I think in the research community and certainly in the community that institutes guidelines and, broadly applied recommendations, the number one goal is to reduce opioids. And similar to what Dr. McCullough was talking about when he was first getting information about what other states and governing bodies were doing with regard to the initial response to COVID, his recollection was that he was the only one asking about what to do for the patient. Everybody was like, well, what do we do for ourselves? Well, how do we protect ourselves? Well, where are these resources going? Okay, but that's fine. But where is the gap in care right here is early outpatient treatment. What are we doing for these patients before they get sick enough to come to the hospital? So I'm going to call that out here in the pain management world. What are we doing actually to help people with a good quality of life. Number one. And if that, requires long-term opioid use, so be it. Of course, in the assumption that it's being used safely and effectively and compliantly and all of that stuff. But that should be the number one goal, to reduce pain. But this paper and so many other papers, and by the way, almost every test question and board certification question, and you name it, and study outcome, primary outcome measures is, how do we reduce opioid use? And so if you think that your physician has a bias towards just reducing opioids, it's literally because they're inundated with just reduce opioids from every professional angle. But I digress. The erosion of trust in the patient-clinician relationship is an underappreciated and vital component of this complex implementation problem, meaning the problem of reducing opioids. So yeah, patients don't trust us. Let's talk about the patient perspective. When providers exclusively focus on the need to taper opioids given their risks while overlooking the impact of persistent pain on a patient's life, some patients feel the clinician does not believe them or dismisses the impact poor pain control could have on their quality of life. Right? And this is, why we have said multiple times, when you're talking with your pain doctor and you're describing your pain, don't use a number, because the pain scale is, I don't want to say meaningless, but there's no emotion attached to it. It's an arbitrary, objective checkbox. Okay. And so in order for your physician to have empathy, it helps to have emotion. And with emotion comes things like, well, I really can't crawl on the floor with my grandbaby. I really can't sit at the kitchen and make Thanksgiving meal for my family, and they're depending on me to do this. Trust me, none of them know how to cook. It's all upon me, but I can't do it. What can you do to help me? Right? So making some links to your quality of life, some direct links to your ability to function, that is going to pull the heartstrings of your physician and get them to listen a little bit more. Fear of losing access to medications can also harm the patient-clinician relationship. I like how the paper here says patients are acutely aware of the opioid epidemic. Are you guys acutely aware of the opioid epidemic? Yes, everybody is acutely aware. And so patients are concerned that, their physician may cut them off, the pharmacy may cut them off, or supply may be an issue even if they have a, functioning prescription. The patient-clinician relationship is also complicated by stigmatizing health system processes health systems use to promote safety alienate people taking opioids for persistent pain. For example, we have the opioid contract. Now, the paper goes on to describe how the opioid contract, the language can be coercive, not necessarily collaborative. It can be accusatory, confrontational. And the idea behind the contract supposedly was to improve patient safety and outcomes. I never understood it that way. Maybe I understood it wrong. I always thought it gave me some leverage as the prescriber to say, hey, these are the lines and you're coloring outside of them. Like either back off or I'm going to have to back off, right? We're outside of the terms of agreement. And maybe that's true. And by secondary nature, it protects the patient. But regardless of whether we like them or not, they are required, at least in the state of Texas. And we get asked for them. When I'm audited every 2 years, they look for it. They want to say, hey, where's your patient contract for this specific patient? We want to see it. Though intended to protect the patient from harm, the use of contracts, pill counts, and urine drug screens convey mistrust, suspicion that the patient is misusing or abusing the medications. Well, yeah. It does. again, what can we do about that? Number one, it's required by the state of Texas, and I'm sure many other states.
I wish we could just give our word.
I know.
Remember those days when your word was your bond?
Back when everything was in black and white. Yeah, no. Okay, so the problem with, and this is where sort of everybody pays the price of a minority. And that's not to denigrate the minority or to assign blame by any stretch. If anybody knows anything about addiction, nobody chooses it. Okay, it's not a path that you say, hey, I'm going to screw my life over and everyone in my life's over. I'm going to just go ahead and push that red button and see what happens. No, that's not what happens. Addiction is a very complex disorder that takes over your brain's ability even to say no. The front part of your brain shrinks with long-term addiction practices, let's call it. And it's not to say that your ability to say no is eliminated. Obviously, you can still make choices, but when you are addicted to something, truly addicted to something, you would be surprised what you would give up. Stretch of the imagination. So to say that those people are just choosing to harm themselves, even to the point of death in some cases, is misinformed at best. Okay, so I don't know. Go read a book. We'll talk about addiction a little bit more later. But the point of the matter is there is a small but significant population within the pain management community that is at risk for developing addiction. And so how do we manage that? Do you think that someone who's addicted is always going to be truthful? I mean, especially when it comes to getting the thing that they're addicted to? Of course not. So we have to resort to ways where we can identify it and potentially intervene and save that person's life. So I don't look at it as much as a punishing way because I'm not the police. I think, a lot of patients maybe have concerns too that you can't be honest with your doctor because, you're going to get in some trouble for it. No, that's not the case. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a judge. I'm not a police officer. Like, there's two people you don't want to lie to, and that's your doctor and your lawyer. And I guess your priest. Make that three people. So definitely you want to be open and honest about what's going on. But not everybody is. And so, again, I'm not looking at it to be punishing. And I think a lot of doctors maybe inherently think that they are, or like they're kind of coming at it from a parental role and, oh, shame on you. You should know better than that, and that type of thing. And now, you feel like you're 2 feet tall in front of the white coat. And I mean, nobody wants to be in that situation. I know that I would not want to be. So, no, we're not here to punish you. We're literally here to make sure that you don't die, okay? And some of that might be, oh, hey, it looks like your drug screen came up negative this time around. Is everything okay? I mean, when are you taking your medicine? Well, okay, so you took it, your last dose was like 5 days ago, but you should have had medicine lasting all the way up to today, so you ran out early. Well, that explains the drug screen, but why are you running out early? Right? I mean, the reality of the situation is you're diverting your medications, right? You're giving your medicines to someone else, you're selling your medicines or whatever, or perhaps more commonly, you're taking more than what's prescribed. If that's the case, and let's say you're my patient and you feel the need to take more than what is prescribed, you got to let me know. Let me know, because then I can adapt with you. I can roll with you. It's going to be a lot harder down the line to maintain that trust when I see that, you're not holding up your end of the bargain. So, again, it's not that I'm here to punish you, but I want to make sure that we're aligned in our plan of care. It's there to protect you. If you feel like you have to take more, I got to know why. Maybe the medicine is not being metabolized the way that I expect it to be. Maybe the pain is worse than I thought it was. And so there are reasons why, but I just got to know, and that's to your own benefit. But yeah, and the same thing goes with pill counts. Like if I which, by the way, I'm required to do pill counts. I mean, if you're registered with the state of Texas as a pain clinic, you're required to do pill counts. So I try to make it seem like, hey, this is not personal. None of this is personal. It's all business, right? At the end of the day. But, I just got to do my due diligence, and hopefully you can do your due diligence as well. And these are the things that help build that relationship, I would suggest, that help build the trust. It's sort of like trust but verify, right? You got yourself an iPhone. Maybe you have it locked up, right? You can't really see what's on there. Now you might say, oh well, you might say to your spouse, well, you can't look at my phone. Trust me, there's nothing on there, but you can't look at it. Now I'm starting to think something's on there, right? So you want to have a relationship with your doctor in the same way. Not that I want to go through your phone, but you understand the principle. Trust but verify. I think that goes a long way to build a relationship. So, these are things from the patient's perspective. There are some things from the clinician perspective as well. While only a minority of patients taking long-term opioids misuse them, it remains a regular occurrence that inflicts more widespread damage on the patient-clinician relationship in the form of suspicion and distrust. This is referring to the topic of tapering. Tapering. In some cases, patients' attempts to get their needs met. I'm going to end on that. Okay, so let's talk about tapering real quick. We've gone over this before, the idea of the forced taper. And, I think that a lot of the big tapering started, let's say, after 2016, the CDC, right? CDC came in and said, hey, don't anybody take more than 90. That's way too high. The risk outweighs the benefit. Well, they didn't quite say that, but that was the message that was received. And so pretty much overnight, physicians cut patients clean dry. Either, from 150 down to 90, which is, a huge drop overnight, or, even less to zero because they're afraid of, the implications that could occur. Man, it wasn't even until, was it 2020? When did the FDA come back out and revise that? 2022. In November of 2022. So we're talking 6 years of practicing under an aura of opioids are bad and really should not be used in any way, shape, or form. Okay. If you don't think that played a role in how your physician engages with you or how the system engages with you, you might think about that again. It definitely does. Now, it's been 4 years since 2022. However, it seems like the feeling of 2016 is persistent. Speaking for myself, I'm sure many of you would agree. The idea of forced taper, I think first it's okay, well, let's get you to an appropriate dose, whatever an appropriate dose is. And then it's okay, well, if you're going to, partake in this plan of care, you have to do other things too. And that is also standard of care. That is also a checkbox by the state, because they understand, the evidence behind long-term opioid use is weak at best. In most cases, the risks far outweigh the benefits. Now, that may not be true for your particular case, but this is what the very large studies show and what policy is made from. Okay. So we understand that we got to get you down to an effective dose, and we don't want to just do opioids because, again, we have opioid therapy by itself. So what other things are you doing, doctor? Right? That is the standard of care. If all you're doing is pushing opioids, then you're really no better than a drug dealer. if you're going to be honest. Why go to medical school and understand all the ins and outs of and intricacies of the human body, and the hundreds of medications that are available on the market and how everything works, and physical therapy and movement and diet and exercise? Why understand or learn anything about that as a physician if all you're going to do is prescribe opioids? Because a drug dealer can do that. So the idea is that to be as effective and safe and robust and pulling on all of your energies and knowledge as a specialist, you're going to do more than one thing. And as a patient, I would want that to happen, right? If I had cancer and the oncologist was said, hey, you're just going to take this one pill, and it might cause irreversible harm, but it might just allow you to keep going from day to day. Okay, is that it? Can we just get rid of the cancer?
It's a big ask.
It's a big ask. Same thing with most cancer treatments don't just include one medication. And most good cancer treatments don't just include prescription strength medicines that are tens of thousands of dollars. You are also going to include other lifestyle interventions, herbal remedies, Chinese interventions that are been around for thousands of years, right? Like, these are the things I'm going to be looking for. I want to hit all my bases, right? All my bases. Just like NASA has redundancy system after redundancy system, because guess what? Something breaks on the dark side of the moon. Ain't nobody coming to get you, man. So, same thing in medicine. We want to make sure that we're really hitting everything from multiple angles. But yeah, the tapers, man, they don't have any studies to show what type of tapers are the best. I mean, as far as speed, as far as, how much of a jump you take at once type thing. They're not going to have studies on this. I mean, the amount of inter-patient variability is so tremendous in my head. I don't know how you could design a good study. The appropriate thing is patient-centered if you're going to go down that road. I could do a whole episode on how to properly maintain long-term opioid therapy, and maybe I will do that. Actually, you know what? Let's do that for next Monday. Let's make a video for next Monday, because I'm actually going to be in California next Monday. More to come on that. But we're going to make a video and have it set to play how to manage long-term opioid therapy the Dr. Dustin way. There you go. But that is the thing. It's so individualized that, again, to design a study or even implement some broadly applied consensus or protocol or approach can be very challenging. The CDC attempted to do this, and basically the thing is just go slow, go easy. They argue against rapid tapers. Basically argued against the one thing that they caused in 2016, right? So definitely, we want to go easy on that, because probably you didn't get up to those higher doses overnight, right? Like you're not going to come down overnight either.
I'm kind of curious. What's been the most interesting taper story that you can think of that you've had to implement or that you were a part of?
So I'm always tapering patients.
Really?
I am not unilaterally. So I think that's the key word here is we want decisions to be made with the patient's input, right?
That makes sense.
The moment I lose the trust of my patient is the moment I have a real hard time managing the patient. So we want to do everything in lockstep together. Now, what to do, it just means we talk about it and find some reasonable path forward together. But no, it's not uncommon that, I will still get patients, let's say, held over from the last decade, and they're on between 100 and 200, sometimes 300 oral morphine equivalents of medicine. These are patients that started, that came to me with this amount of dose, right? Now that's a really high dose. So, I can't help but wonder and I say that's really high dose because all the patients that I manage otherwise on opioid pain medication were doing just dandy on way less.
Gotcha.
Way less. So I have to wonder does this patient actually need the medicine or not? Now it's possible they do, but I'm not going to know till I get to know that patient.
Right.
Right. So one way we might approach that, let's say, would be to, first of all, educate. Let's figure out where you are. What's your pain doing to your life? What's worked over the last decade, what hasn't worked, right? I just want to know you as a patient and understand what you've been going through so that you know that I'm making the best decision I can for you. If I just met you and the second sentence out of my mouth is, boy, that's a high dose, we need to cut you down. Whoa, you don't even know me, right? And I've heard of stories where that happens. So, you might take a step back as a patient and point that out. I'm like, I'm sorry, what are you basing that off of? Because you didn't ask me anything about my history, so why don't we get into that? Mm-hmm. But no, I think, again, you're aligning your goals, the physician and the patient's goals, and just chip away real slow. Because again, even to get to some of these doses, it wouldn't happen within a year, sometimes 2-3 years.
Gotcha.
To get to that dose.
A really long-term taper.
So yeah, let's think about that long-term coming off this stuff, right? You got to give time for the brain to catch up, to reset its neurotransmitters and receptors and all these things. Think of it like having a brain injury with this medication constantly sitting on these receptors, right? It changes how your brain functions. So you got to be mindful and careful to come off of this stuff again. But yeah, just slowly chipping away. Couple patients, maybe let's say 3 to 6 months, you're down from 150 oral morphine equivalents to, let's say, closer to 90. No change, by the way, in their symptoms. There's one patient I'm thinking of. She was probably on 60 or 70 oral morphine equivalents. Real bad pain despite that. We put a stimulator in her, and within a year we had her weaned off all medicine, and she's at home doing great.
Wow.
So there's that kind of story. There's another story where a patient came in on 300 oral morphine equivalents, hydrocodone, morphine, and just in 10 out of 10 pain, crying in my clinic on 300 oral morphine equivalents. And I said, I don't know that this medicine's helping you. Did some switcheroos. Let's try this. Let's try that. Maybe a couple of procedures later, we started coming off her opioids. She was a case where I suspected she had some opioid-induced hyperalgesia, a relatively young person, which I think it happens more so in the younger folks. Her pain got better, man. She's on less than 90 now.
Wow.
So more than a half reduction. And this is, by the way, over 18 months. So it took a while to get here. And, her pain was from a 10. Now it's down to a 5 or a 6. Or not at 0.
Right.
But how much better off is she, not only from a cognitive perspective, a functioning perspective, but also just the risk of having that much medicine laying around even in her system.
Right.
Whole lot better. So, and we kind of settled out right there. We've decided that maybe going further is not the best move right now. So we're just letting this simmer and see how she does, But that's my point, is that you really can't apply, I don't think, a standardized approach across the board, because everybody's going to have a different outcome, different experience, that type of thing. The main thing is that you're aligned with that patient. And again, this is goal number 2. I haven't forgotten about goal number 1, which is just treat your pain. So we got to keep that in mind too. What I find interesting here, in some cases, patients attempt to get their needs met through aggressive behaviors, including threats of violence or physical force. These traumatic interactions further contribute to stigma and harm the relationships between the clinician and all patients on long-term opioid therapy. Kind of goes without saying. If you're acting a fool in the clinic, probably your physician's going to want to distance themselves from you. But I mean, it can go both ways, of course. But, I also think of the experience, that we have online, like in social media, TikTok and Instagram and YouTube even. Certain advocates out there actually calling themselves defenders of the pain patient is the latest thing I heard. To protect you from the pain management predators. All right.
Wow.
Oh, yay. If you think anybody that speaks language like that is at all going to be helpful to you, think again. Because when you put such divisive language between you, the patient, and the pain management physician or any physician, you're not going to get your needs met. Period. Okay? Most physicians don't see themselves as predators. Obviously. Most physicians are not predators. Obviously, there are some, and I think anybody with some wisdom should be able to recognize them early on, especially if you listen to this channel, because we definitely highlight those examples. But what it does do, when you have language like that on a mass scale, it does turn off well-meaning physicians. And it does turn off well-meaning physicians who might entertain going into pain management, whether you're family practice or you're a specialist. It's already such a contentious field to be in. Everything seems to be, coming in between the physician and the patient. And when you have such divisive rhetoric and violent rhetoric, defending you from the predators, it's like, okay, you came to me, dude. I'm just here to,
do my job,
and go home to my family, So, that's why we promote here the importance really of developing a relationship with your physician. You need a relationship. You don't need to treat them as somebody that you need to be defended against. Because if you're in a relationship with them, you probably won't need to defend yourself against them. If you come at them all hot and fired up and ready to, do your social justice, chances are they're not going to want to do business with you. Just speaking for the crowd. So we definitely promote relationship building. And this is some of the things that the paper highlighted actually as part of that restoration of trust. We recommend that health systems and clinicians trying to achieve population-wide opioid harm reduction through, again, the problem is not pain management or improved function, it's opioid reduction. So another little critique there, but you understand the principle. We recommend that through the implementation of evidence-based opioid prescribing guidelines that take meaningful steps to restore trust between patients and long-term opioids and their clinicians through investment in relational infrastructure and access to evidence-based pain management resources. So, clinicians can foster relationships by inquiring about the patient's life circumstances and seeking to understand the personal impact of pain through active listening and reflective acknowledgement. 100%. Physicians, listen to your patients. Patients, give your physician something to listen to. The pain scale is not going to cut it. To that end, health systems should engage patient partners to ensure that care processes take patient perspectives into account. I can't help but think of our own Mr. Keith Johnson being our patient partner because I got to say, I learned so much about the reality of being a pain patient through talking with Keith, through talking with y'all on this forum. It's just been a tremendous eye-opener, and I hope you guys can realize that. It's one of those things where, I always had like an idea that, maybe your experience was not super great, but to really hear the nitty-gritty details, I'm like, whoa, I cannot believe that is real. And it has changed how I approach things with just a little bit more care, let's say, a little bit more pause in my step. So I agree with this. Patient partners are going to be tremendous, and that's what we're trying to do here. So they're also talking about individualized care plans, which can help avoid poorly tolerated dose reductions, restore patients' sense of control, and reassure them that they will not be abandoned in their suffering. So yes, individualized care plans, absolutely crucial. And again, that's what we all want to promote on this channel. We want to restore the relationship between a pain physician and the pain patient community, not only through, this interaction, but through by giving you tools that you can take to your physician and say, you know what, before I was sort of approaching a problem this way and it wasn't really getting me the results I wanted, I'm going to try approaching it this way and see if that is a little bit better. And again, it all comes down to making sure that your physician properly sees you, hears you, and of course, I'm putting the responsibility on the physician as well. It's our job to listen and to hear and to put ourselves in your shoes as much as possible. And individualized care is, again, that's what it's all about. Man, medicine has just been absolutely gutted by big money, big interest. We're talking big business and politics. And it's not just pain management, it's medicine as a whole. Did you guys know, this is a little off topic, but Arthur Sackler. You guys familiar with Arthur Sackler?
Sackler part sounds familiar.
The Sackler family. So this is, I'm pulling this information from Dr. McCullough's book here with John Leake, The Courage to Treat COVID-19, I believe is the title of it. If you haven't gotten it and you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. Actually, I did read it cover to cover, and if you thought the interview was controversial, the stuff that they've exposed in that book will really put it into perspective. Pain management is not immune from this. And in fact, so if you go back to Arthur Sackler, so, quote, most of the questionable practices that propelled the pharmaceutical industry into the scourge it is today can be attributed to Arthur Sackler. So Arthur Sackler and his family, they ultimately ended up with Purdue Pharma, by the way, which created the OxyContin. And although Purdue had conducted no clinical studies on how addictive or prone to abuse the drug might be, the FDA approved it. They just put a package insert in there which announced that the drug was safer than rival painkillers, and that was because of the patented delayed absorption mechanism, and that was believed to reduce abuse liability. Of course, that did not happen. So again, for all of you who live and die by the FDA approval, they approved Purdue's medication OxyContin with no safety studies. The FDA examiner who oversaw the process, Dr. Curtis Wright, left the agency shortly afterward, and within 2 years, he had taken a job at Purdue.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Just amazing.
So Arthur Sackler, and his family, they were responsible for the phrase, discuss it with your doctor, right? So they advertised pharmaceuticals. They were responsible for putting informational pieces about pharmaceuticals into our medical journals. They were all over the place with the propaganda of medication. And by the way, I heard this the other day. You know why we get commercials on television? Not commercials for pharmaceuticals.
Because someone lobbied that there should be freedom of speech.
Yeah. Well, so the real reason is not so that you as a patient can watch it and then go talk to your doctor about it. Maybe that's how it was 20 years ago. But now these pharmaceutical companies, they pay so much money to the TV ads and to the stations that these stations cannot talk bad about the medication. So they're just owning the narrative by putting commercials on. They're not doing anything else. They know they're not going to get anybody that comes through on those commercials. It's just so that they can control the media from talking bad about it. So yes, we live in a very crooked system. And that's probably why only 40% of Americans trust the system anymore. And I think definitely the COVID era highlighted a lot of the shortcomings with regard to public transparency, trust, and the preservation of physician and patient autonomy and individualized plans of care, and you name it. But the good news is 85% still trust their physician, their own personal physician. And so that is where the money needs to be spent, in properly communicating with your physician, developing a relationship with your physician, not listening to people that would call your physician a predator or that they're some sort of defender. It's absolutely ridiculous. That's not saying every doctor is a great doctor. More doctors are great than are not. I would argue that.
That part I believe too. But the system, whoa.
The only way to beat the system is to stare straight into the eyes of your doctor. I mean, quite frankly, the only way to get out of this life is to stare straight into the eyes of Jesus. If you think healthcare is screwed up, well, think about life in general. So the number of distractions and controversies and truths and mistruths, you name it, it's not anything anybody can handle or comprehend. And so if you want to keep your eyes on the truth, look straight into the eyes of Jesus. And if you're with your physician, just work on that relationship with your physician. That is where excellent things can happen.
Bang.
And that is my message for today. Anything new with the Artemis, or are they still just floating in the cold?
Let's check them out here real quick. Artie, what are you guys up to?
I'm going to pull up some of the comments. All right. Hey, gang. Let's see what you got here. Lugnut says 40% is pretty low. The trust in this administration is 36% as of last week. Yeah. Well, this was what you say can and will be used against you in your medical record. That is true. Yeah. Don't give them anything to write about. Unless it's just about how much you're suffering, then give them all you got. Interesting things here. My doctor clicked when I said I was having more bad days than I was a few weeks ago, and told her 3 out of 7 I couldn't get up from. Yeah, good. So we're seeing some trends. I mean, not good that you're suffering. It's good that your physician can see that. Yeah, physician protected first, then patient. Yep. That can certainly apply differently in different contexts. Oh, you got the... That must be an animation. Yeah, that's a visualization. Okay.
But still, 251,000 miles from Earth, moving at 949 miles an hour.
Oh, they've slowed down a bit. You can almost run to catch them. The surgeon I was seeing was going to do a reconstruction with Tylenol and naproxen. Kind of glad we broke paths. Gee whiz. Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about, Kate Bakes. Tylenol and naproxen. Ouch. Erica says, unfortunately, medical interventions are not one size fits all. I'm in year 24 at this point. I've tried everything out there. Medication is the only thing I have left that gives me any quality of life. Well, I'm glad it's doing that at least. And yes, you are spot on. It is not one size fits all, and it's so lazy to think that it does. And And, you know, that's just not why we went to school, to apply such dumbed down treatment protocols. Robin Landry, I actually 30 years ago was on a very high dose of morphine. 30 years later, dropped a lot. Yeah, that's awesome, Robin. 5 years up to dose, 25 years to lower it. There you go. So, yeah, does not happen overnight, not by any stretch. But the glory to God here is that you made it an extra 25 years. 30 years really on this medication. So whoever was managing you, both you and that person, you know, well done. And the more you know. Yeah. All right. Well, very good, guys. Oh, look, they're moving.
They're doing stuff.
I was going to ask them if they have any hydrocodone in space. You know, if they like hit their head or have a gash or something.
Great question. Yeah. What kind of medicines do they take up there?
Yeah. And then, you know, do they have it under lock and key?
That's a great question,
right?
too.
Do two astronauts have to like put in, like turn the keys at the same time from opposite ends of the module?
That's a great question.
And there's
just
probably
for some pain relief.
They probably have to sign a pain contract and pee in a cup. They probably have those little anti-gravity cups they pee in too. No, I kid. Thank you guys for another episode tonight. Don't forget to check out, does Jose have a show tomorrow?
Wednesday.
So
yes.
We're off Tuesdays.
Correct. Well,
okay.
We're off this Tuesday.
Right. Okay.
The specialist that he's bringing in, he wasn't available for Tuesday, so Wednesday was his best upfront day.
Will he be in the morning? What time do I need to tell people?
The last I heard, it was around noon, but that hasn't been confirmed.
Okay. The challenges of interviewing folks outside of our sphere. But yes, check out Jose's episode on Wednesday. And then, of course, Katie is back Wednesday night. And we are doing... has anybody sent in their pictures of their food?
I need to ask her because the last time...
I think she got a couple.
She did get a couple.
Yes.
She did get a couple.
I need to check in with her, see what she's doing with that. Don't forget to check that out Wednesday night. And of course, Keith is back here again on Thursday. I will be out of town on Friday through next Monday, but we will have a video for you just the same Monday night at 7. Until then, you guys take care. We'll see you on the interwebs.